Flames licked the mahogany walls of the sprawling estate, turning a multi-million-dollar empire into a suffocating inferno. Amidst the choking smoke, Alex stared at her reflection in the shattering glass, terrified, exhausted, and hopelessly trapped. She thought this was her absolute end. She didn't know a monster was coming to save her. Alex Gallagher adjusted the collar of her restrictive black button-down shirt, feeling the fabric pull tight across her broad shoulders and full chest. Working for Lumiere, catering usually meant blending into the background, but at 240 pounds, Alex rarely felt invisible. She felt glaringly out of place, especially here. Tonight's event was hosted at a fortified mansion in the opulent depths of Alpine, New Jersey, a private fortress disguised as a luxury residence. The driveway was packed with custom Maybachs, armored Cadillac Escalades, and sleek Ferraris. The air inside the grand ballroom was thick with the scent of Tom Ford cologne, expensive champagne, and something far more dangerous, unchecked power. Alex carried a heavy silver tray of caviar blinis, navigating through a sea of razor-thin supermodels and men in tailored Brioni suits. She kept her eyes down, her breathing shallow, to avoid drawing attention to herself. Her thighs rubbed together painfully under the cheap polyester of her slacks, a constant, humiliating reminder of the space she occupied. "Watch it, sweetheart," a sneering voice muttered as a tall man with a broken nose bumped her shoulder, spilling a drop of champagne onto her cuff. He didn't apologize. Nobody here apologized to the hired help. Retreating to the quiet sanctity of the grand library to rest her aching feet, Alex slipped through a heavy oak door and leaned against the wood, closing her eyes. She just needed 60 seconds to breathe. 60 seconds away from the mocking glances and the suffocating pressure. "You're breathing like a cornered rabbit," Alex gasped, her eyes snapping open. Sitting in the shadows of a high-backed leather wing chair was Taylor Russo. Taylor was a myth whispered about in the gritty corners of the city, a man who controlled the eastern seaboard's shipping lanes with an iron fist and a merciless temper. He was 34, built like a heavyweight fighter with sharp, aristocratic features and eyes the color of a bruised twilight sky. He wasn't supposed to be in here. He was supposed to be holding court in the ballroom. I'm sorry," Alex stammered, her face flushing crimson. She immediately moved to leave, her hands trembling so badly the silver tray clattered against her hip. "I thought this room was empty." "Stay," Taylor commanded. The word was spoken softly, but it carried the weight of a physical restraint. He stood up slowly, stepping into the dim light cast by the single Tiffany lamp on the desk. He didn't look at her with the usual mixture of pity or disdain she was so accustomed to from men of his caliber. His gaze was entirely different. It was heavy, calculating, and intensely focused, traveling over her soft curves, the flush on her round cheeks, and the frantic pulse at the base of her throat. "What is your name?" he asked, closing the distance between them. "Alex," she whispered, her back pressed flat against the door. "You're shaking, Alex," Taylor murmured, stopping mere inches from her. He reached out his large, calloused hand, brushing against the polyester sleeve of her uniform. The sheer heat radiating from him was intoxicating. "You don't belong in a room full of jackals. You're too soft, too real." Before Alex could process the bizarre, thrumming tension vibrating between them, the heavy mahogany doors burst open, throwing Alex forward, directly into Taylor's chest. "Boss!" a panicked voice barked. It was Jordan Taylor's underboss, his face pale, a customized Glock already drawn and held at his side. "It's the Moretti family. They bought off the private security detail. They're breaching the front gates. We need to move you to the safe room now." Taylor's expression shifted instantly from quiet fascination to lethal composure. "How many?" 24. Heavy artillery. They aren't here to negotiate, Taylor. They're here to burn the house to the ground with everyone inside. Alex felt the blood drain from her face. Her heart hammered wildly against her ribs. Gunfire, sharp, deafening, and terrifyingly close, erupted from the main foyer. Screams pierced the classical music that had been playing moments before. The elegant gala had instantly transformed into a slaughterhouse. "Take the underground tunnel," Taylor ordered Jordan, his voice devoid of fear. He looked down at Alex, his dark eyes locking onto her terrified brown ones. "Stay with me." I can't." Alex choked out panic, seizing her throat. "I have to get to the staff exit. My co-workers are already dead or running." Taylor cut her off, brutally. "If you go out that door, the Morettis will gun you down just for standing in this house. You come with me." He grabbed her wrist, his grip firm but strangely gentle, and pulled her toward the hidden paneled door behind the library's massive fireplace. But as the secret door clicked open, a massive explosion rocked the estate. The floor violently pitched upward. The blast shattered the library's floor-to-ceiling windows, sending a storm of jagged glass tearing through the air. Alex screamed as the concussive wave threw her backward. Her head slammed against the edge of a heavy mahogany desk, and the world momentarily faded into a ringing, dizzying blackness. When she forced her eyes open, the library was unrecognizable. The antique Persian rugs were ablaze, the heavy velvet drapes acting as fuses that carried the fire up to the vaulted wooden ceiling. Thick, acrid smoke began to fill the room, burning her lungs and stinging her eyes. "Taylor!" She coughed, trying to push herself up. Her left ankle flared with blinding pain. It was twisted, pinned awkwardly beneath a fallen beam from the ceiling's ornate molding. Through the roaring flames and the continuous staccato of gunfire from the hallways, a massive shadow moved. Taylor emerged from the debris, a line of crimson blood trickling down his temple, staining his pristine white dress shirt. He had lost his suit jacket, and a heavy Sig Sauer pistol was gripped tightly in his right hand. "Alex!" he shouted, his voice cutting through the deafening roar of the fire. He crossed the burning room in 3 massive strides, dropping to his knees beside her. Without a moment's hesitation, he shoved the heavy wooden beam off her leg, his muscles straining against the immense weight. "Can you walk?" he demanded, his eyes scanning her face for signs of a concussion. Alex tried to put weight on her left foot and cried out, instantly collapsing. "No!" She sobbed, the reality of her situation crashing down on her. The smoke was getting thicker, curling around them like dark, suffocating snakes. "My ankle is broken. I can't walk." "Then we don't walk," Taylor said grimly. He holstered his weapon and slid his arms under her. Panic surged through Alex. She knew her own body. She knew the space she took up, the undeniable reality of her weight. Over 240 pounds of dead weight. For her entire life, she had been told she was too big, too much a burden to carry physically and emotionally. "No, stop!" Alex cried out, desperately, pushing against his broad chest. "You can't lift me. You'll slow yourself down. Just go, Taylor. They're coming for you, not me." "Shut up!" he growled, the muscles in his arms flexing as he easily scooped her off the floor. "I'm too heavy," she cried, tears carving clean lines through the soot on her cheeks, shame burning hotter than the flames surrounding them. "Leave me!" Taylor pulled her tight against his chest, holding her securely, as if she weighed absolutely nothing. He looked down into her terrified, tear-streaked face, his own expression completely devoid of hesitation. "You're perfect," the Mafia boss whispered, his voice an absolute anchor in the chaos. With Alex securely in his arms, Taylor turned and kicked open the hidden door behind the fireplace. The narrow, stone-lined passageway was dark, untouched by the fire raging in the house above. He carried her down the spiraling stone steps, his breathing steady despite the frantic situation and the burden in his arms. "Keep your head tucked under my chin," he ordered, navigating the dark tunnel with the practiced ease of a man who had planned for his own assassination 100 times over. "Don't breathe in any more smoke." Alex clung to him, burying her face into the damp fabric of his shirt. She could hear the steady, powerful thud of his heart beneath her ear, the smell of gun smoke, blood, and expensive cologne wrapped around her. No one had ever held her like this. No one had ever looked at her without judgment, let alone risked their life to carry her out of a burning building. The tunnel seemed to stretch for miles beneath the Alpine estate. Every few minutes they could feel the distant, muffled vibrations of explosions above them. The Moretti family was completely leveling his home. "Why?" Alex finally whispered, her voice raw and scratching from the smoke inhalation. "Why didn't you just leave me? You don't even know me." Taylor didn't break his stride. The emergency lighting in the tunnel cast long, flickering shadows over his sharp features. "In my world, everything is transactional. Everyone wants something. Money, territory, blood. Up there in that ballroom, they are all parasites." He looked down at her, his jaw tightening. "You were just trying to survive the night. And when I looked at you, I saw the only real thing in that entire house." He shifted his grip, holding her even tighter. "The Russo family doesn't abandon what belongs to them." Alex's breath hitched. "What belongs to them?" The sheer possessiveness in his tone sent a shiver down her spine that had nothing to do with fear. They finally reached a heavy, reinforced steel door at the end of the tunnel. Taylor set her down gently, keeping one arm securely around her waist to support her weight, while he punched a 12-digit code into the biometric keypad. The heavy door hissed open, revealing the cool, damp night air of a dense forest miles away from the burning estate. Hidden beneath a canopy of pine trees sat a matte black, armor-plated Mercedes G-Wagon. "Get in," Taylor said, opening the passenger-side door and lifting her effortlessly onto the plush leather seat. As he rounded the hood to the driver's side, Alex looked back through the trees. The sky above the tree line was glowing a violent, angry orange. Taylor's empire was burning to the ground, and yet as he climbed into the driver's seat and started the roaring engine, he didn't look back at the flames once. He only looked at her. "Where are we going?" Alex asked, her hands trembling as she pulled the seatbelt across her chest. Taylor slammed the vehicle into gear, his eyes dark and promising dangerous things. "To war, Alex. We are going to war. And you are going to stay exactly where I can see you." Rain lashed fiercely against the reinforced windshield of the armored Mercedes G-Wagon, blurring the flashing neon lights of the sleeping city into jagged streaks of color. Inside the heavy vehicle, the silence was absolute, broken only by the rhythmic hum of the massive engine and Alex's own ragged, shallow breathing. Her left ankle throbbed with a sickening, relentless rhythm, the pain radiating up her calf in sharp, electric spikes. Taylor drove with terrifying precision, his large hands gripping the leather steering wheel, his jaw set in a rigid line of absolute stone. He navigated the labyrinthine, rain-slicked streets of industrial Brooklyn, far away from the smoking ruins of his Alpine estate. Headlights eventually cut through the darkness, illuminating a crumbling, graffiti-covered warehouse that looked like it had been abandoned for decades. Taylor did not slow down. He steered the heavy vehicle directly toward the rusting metal garage doors, punching a sequence on a hidden transmitter clipped to the sun visor. With a heavy metallic groan, the corrugated steel rolled upward, revealing a steep concrete ramp plunging deep into the subterranean earth. The tires squealed as they descended, dropping story after story beneath the city's surface until the bleak, damp darkness gave way to blinding, sterile white light. Alex squinted, raising a trembling hand to shield her eyes. The space they had entered was not a garage. It was a sprawling, clandestine hospital ward. It hummed with the high-stakes, frantic energy of an intensive care unit during a mass casualty event. Rows of gleaming surgical theaters lay behind thick glass walls, while state-of-the-art telemetry monitors beeped rhythmically in the background. Nurses in dark blue scrubs darted between stainless steel supply carts, and the sharp, unmistakable scent of medical-grade bleach and iodine hung heavily in the chilled air. Taylor killed the engine and was instantly out of the vehicle, rounding the hood to pull the passenger door open. He scooped Alex into his arms once more, carrying her bulk with the same effortless, protective ease he had shown in the burning library. "Boss!" a voice called out sharply. Dr. Harrison, a brilliant trauma surgeon who had lost his medical license a decade ago for refusing to testify against the syndicate, rushed forward. He was wiping blood from his gloved hands, his eyes immediately assessing Alex's pale, sweat-drenched face. "Triage protocols are already active. We have 5 of your men from the Alpine detail currently in surgical theaters. What's her status? Blunt force trauma to the left. Ankle severe smoke, inhalation, possible minor concussion." Taylor rattled off the symptoms with military precision, bypassing the standard triage beds and carrying her directly toward a private, heavily equipped trauma bay at the far end of the facility. "I want full imaging, Harrison, X-rays, a CT scan, and push an IV of broad-spectrum antibiotics and Dilaudid immediately. She doesn't feel another ounce of pain tonight. Do you understand me?" "Understood," Harrison replied, gesturing for 2 nurses to follow them. Taylor gently deposited Alex onto the crisp white sheets of the hospital bed. The mattress was narrow, and she instinctively tried to shrink herself, pulling her arms tight against her sides to take up less space. Taylor noticed the subtle movement instantly. He caught her wrist, his bruised, soot-stained thumb pressing gently against her racing pulse. "Stop doing that," he commanded softly, leaning over her so that he was the only thing she could see in the bright, chaotic room. "You don't need to make yourself smaller here, Alex. You are exactly the size you are meant to be. Take up the space. Own it." Nurses descended upon her rapidly, expertly, cutting away the charred polyester of her catering uniform and securing an IV line into the back of her right hand. The cold rush of saline and potent painkillers hit her bloodstream almost immediately, dulling the agonizing throb in her ankle to a distant, manageable ache. She watched in a narcotic haze as Dr. Harrison manipulated the joint, confirming a clean, albeit severe, Bimmel-Jordan-Lahr fracture. They cast her leg in heavy fiberglass, wrapping it tightly while monitoring her oxygen saturation levels on the glowing screens beside the bed. Hours bled away in the quiet hum of the underground ICU. When Alex finally woke from a deep, medically induced sleep, the trauma bay was dim, illuminated only by the soft blue glow of the cardiac monitors. Taylor was sitting in a steel chair beside her bed, his elbows resting on his knees, his dark eyes fixed intensely on her face. He had changed into a clean black shirt, but the scent of smoke still lingered in his hair. "How do you feel?" he asked, his voice, a low, comforting rumble in the quiet room. "Like I fell off a building," Alex rasped gratefully, accepting the plastic cup of ice water he held to her lips. She looked around the sophisticated medical facility. "What is this place? How does a Mafia boss have an entire emergency department buried under Brooklyn?" Taylor offered a grim, humorless smile. "Because a Mafia boss who relies on public hospitals is a dead Mafia boss. But this facility is just the antechamber, Alex. It's the waiting room." He stood up, towering over the bed. "I told you, the Morettis wanted to burn my empire to the ground tonight. They failed, because my true empire was never in New Jersey. They burned an empty symbol. He moved to the foot of her bed and effortlessly unlocked the heavy casters. Let me show you the reality of the Russo family. Taylor pushed her hospital bed out of the trauma bay, rolling her past the quiet surgical theaters and down a long concrete corridor that sloped further downward into the earth. At the end of the hall stood a massive circular steel vault door, reminiscent of a Cold War-era nuclear bunker. Taylor placed his hand on a biometric scanner, and a series of heavy mechanical locks disengaged with a deafening, echoing clank. The immense door swung outward, revealing a cavernous, dimly lit subterranean chamber. Alex gasped. The air inside was cool, dry, and smelled of aged paper and old dust. The chamber was staggering in its scale, a hidden historical sanctuary built deep into the bedrock of New York. "This is my inheritance," Taylor explained, pushing her bed over the threshold into the sprawling vault. "My grandfather built this space during Prohibition. It was originally designed to hide Canadian whiskey, but over the decades it became something far more valuable. The 5 families think they know the extent of my assets. They think they know where my money, my ledgers, and my weaknesses are hidden." He gestured to the endless rows of reinforced shelving that stretched into the shadows. Neatly stacked pallets of solid gold bullion caught the faint overhead light, glowing with a dull, heavy warmth. Beyond the gold were rows of antique filing cabinets, fireproof safes, and servers humming with encrypted data. The Alpine estate was a decoy. Taylor continued, his voice echoing off the curved stone ceiling. "A very expensive, very loud distraction. Everything that truly matters, everything that keeps the Eastern Seaboard under my control, is buried right here. This is the heart of the syndicate, and you are the only outsider who has ever seen it." Alex stared at the staggering display of hidden wealth and generational power. She looked down at her own hands, resting on the hospital blanket. "Why are you showing me this? I'm just a caterer Taylor. I'm a nobody. I'm the fat girl who passes out hors d'oeuvres and tries not to get in the way. If the Morettis find out I'm here, I'll be a liability to you." Taylor stopped the bed in the center of the historical vault. He walked around to the side, gripping the metal rails, his face inches from hers. "You are not a liability," he said fiercely, his eyes blazing with an intensity that made her breath hitch. "And you are not a nobody. When the fire surrounded us, you didn't beg for your life. You begged me to leave you behind, so I could survive. You showed more loyalty in 60 seconds than the men who have eaten at my table for 60 years. Your heart, your spirit, your body, they are magnificent, and they are under my protection now." He leaned down, pressing his lips gently against her forehead. The touch was branding a silent vow sworn in the depths of a hidden, unbreachable fortress. Alex closed her eyes, a tear slipping down her cheek. For the first time in her entire life, she felt truly, undeniably safe. But the illusion of safety in the underworld is always fleeting, and a monster was already inside the gates. Tension hung heavy in the subterranean vault the following morning. The sterile quiet of the hidden chamber was violently shattered by the shrill, blaring wail of the facility's perimeter alarm. The harsh red glow of emergency strobe lights began flashing, painting the stacks of gold bullion in a sinister, pulsing crimson. Alex jolted awake, her heart hammering violently against her ribs. Taylor was already on his feet, his posture rigid, a customized heavy-duty tactical rifle suddenly in his hands. His eyes were locked on the thick steel vault door that stood open at the end of the corridor. "Someone breached the upper levels," Taylor growled, checking the chamber of his weapon with a sharp mechanical click. "The security protocols are supposed to lock down the elevator shafts." "Could it be the Morettis?" Alex asked, panic lacing her voice, as she struggled to push herself up against the pillows, her heavy fiberglass cast, anchoring her to the mattress. "No," Taylor said coldly, his mind calculating the impossible breach. "The Morettis don't know this coordinates. Even if they tortured my lieutenants, they couldn't give them this location. Only 3 people in the world have the biometric clearance to bypass the outer doors." Heavy rhythmic footsteps echoed down the concrete corridor, growing louder, more deliberate. The shadows stretched and distorted until a figure stepped into the dim light of the vault. It was Jordan. Taylor's underboss, the man who had warned them of the attack in the library, stood in the doorway. His sharp Italian suit was immaculate, completely devoid of soot or ash. In his right hand, he held a suppressed tactical submachine gun, the barrel leveled squarely at Taylor's chest. "Jordan," Taylor said, his voice a lethal, deceptive whisper, "you sold the Alpine estate to the Morettis." "It was just business, Dom," Jordan replied, smoothly stepping fully into the chamber, his eyes darting nervously around the staggering wealth of the hidden inheritance. "The Morettis offered me a 50% stake in the shipping lanes if I handed you over. You were getting too comfortable, too distracted. You stopped acting like a king, so I decided it was time for a regime change. You led them to my home, and when that failed, you brought them to my sanctuary." Taylor stated, his grip tightening on his rifle. "How many men did you bring down here?" "Enough," Jordan smirked. "They are clearing the ICU right now. Poor Dr. Harrison didn't put up much of a fight. Once they secure the perimeter, they'll come down here to collect the gold, and I'll walk out as the new head of the Eastern Seaboard." Jordan shifted his gaze to Alex, his lip curling in disgust. "And I see you brought the catering pig with you. Touching. You always did have a soft spot for strays." Rage, pure and blinding, ignited in Alex's chest. She had spent a lifetime absorbing insults, swallowing her pride, and shrinking away from cruelty. But looking at Jordan, looking at the man who had ordered an estate full of innocent staff to be burned alive, something within her snapped. She wasn't just angry for herself, she was furious for Taylor. Jordan took another step forward, raising his weapon higher. "Drop the rifle, Dom. If you pull the trigger, my men will hear the echo, and they'll slaughter both of you. Drop it, and I'll make it quick." Taylor didn't flinch, but he slowly lowered the barrel of his rifle, calculating the distance, the angles, the terrible odds. Jordan smiled triumphantly, stepping closer, his attention entirely fixated on the Mafia boss standing before him. He entirely forgot about the heavy, desperate woman in the hospital bed right beside him. Alex didn't hesitate. Ignoring the blinding agony in her broken ankle, she threw her entire body weight sideways, launching herself off the high hospital mattress. All 240 pounds of her mass slammed violently into the heavy metal IV pole standing beside the bed. The tall, weighted stainless steel pole tipped like a felled tree, crashing directly downward into Jordan's blind spot. The heavy metal base of the pole struck Jordan savagely across the side of his skull. The sickening crack of bone echoed through the vault. Jordan cried out in shock and agony, his submachine gun discharging wildly into the ceiling as he staggered sideways, his equilibrium completely shattered. He dropped to one knee, blood instantly pouring from his scalp, trying frantically to raise his weapon again. He never got the chance. Taylor moved with the terrifying speed of an apex predator. He crossed the distance in a fraction of a second, his heavy combat boot lashing out to kick the gun from Jordan's hands. Before the traitor could even draw a breath to scream, Taylor raised his rifle and drove the heavy wooden stock directly into Jordan's face. The underboss collapsed backward onto the cold stone floor, unconscious, his reign of betrayal ending before it even truly began. Panting heavily, Taylor stood over the bleeding body of his former friend. The vault fell deathly silent once more, save for the distant blaring alarms. He slowly turned his head, looking down at Alex. She was sprawled awkwardly on the hard stone floor, her cast scraped against the concrete, her chest heaving, the IV line torn violently from her hand, dripping blood onto the ground. She looked up at him, her eyes wide, terrified of what she had just done, terrified of the violence she had just participated in. Taylor dropped his rifle. He dropped to his knees on the hard floor right beside her, ignoring the blood, ignoring the alarms, ignoring the impending war. He reached out with trembling hands, pulling her heavy, bruised body fiercely into his chest, burying his face in the crook of her neck. "You saved my life," he whispered, his voice cracking with an emotion that the merciless king of New York had never felt before. "You saved me, Alex. I told you," she sobbed, clutching his broad shoulders, holding on to him as tightly as he held on to her. "I'm not a nobody. I can fight too." Taylor pulled back, framing her tear-streaked face in his large hands. He looked at her not just with desire, not just with possessiveness, but with absolute, unwavering reverence. He saw the strength in her soft curves, the fierce courage in her dark eyes. "You are a queen," Taylor declared, his thumb gently wiping away a streak of blood from her cheek. "You are my queen. And when we walk out of this bunker, when I burn the Moretti family to the ground for what they did tonight, you will stand right beside me, and the entire city will bow to you." He kissed her, then a deep, bruised, desperate kiss that tasted of smoke blood and a dangerous, undeniable future. Alex kissed him back, pouring every ounce of her long-repressed strength into the embrace. She wasn't too heavy. She wasn't taking up too much space. In Taylor Russo's arms, surrounded by the hidden legacy of a violent empire, Alex Gallagher had finally found the exact place where she belonged. Wow, what an incredible journey. If Alex and Taylor's thrilling story of survival, hidden legacies, and undeniable romance kept you on the edge of your seat, please do not forget to hit that like button right now. Share this intense Mafia drama with your friends who love suspenseful plot twists and unexpected heroes. Subscribe to our channel and ring the notification bell so you never miss another heart-pounding episode. Drop a comment below. What was your favorite thrilling moment today?